does a PhD in organic chemistry get you? Well, I can tell you. It gets you nominated by the National Geographic as one of the top 10 adventures of the year. It also gets you the authorship of an environmental science textbook. Oh, and I don't know, 35 others. It gives you endless oceanic kayaking adventures, including casually paddling around the Cape Horn. You get mountain biking up a Mongolian desert, countless first ski descents and first rock climbing ascents around the globe. And I don't have enough time to list everything that Jon Turk has been up to. So please, could you please join me in welcoming the irrepressible, magnetic, and soul-stirring Jon Turk to share his provocative look on the vital connection between human beings and the natural world and the meaningful knowledge in between. Jon, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Erica. Wow. It's great to be here. I've been presenting with the Wilderness Canoe Association for a number of times. It's great to be here, and thank you, Alex, and thank you, Erica, and thank you all the speakers who preceded me. Yeah. Well, you know, I'm an old man now. I'm 76. My real extreme adventure days are behind me, but they've informed me a lot, carrying on into old age. And I want to talk about that and my newest work, Tracking Lions, Myth, and Wilderness in Samburu. So I'm going to back up here and just briefly run through some of my previous long expeditions. The 2-year paddle across the North Pacific from Japan to Alaska. And we paddled through some of the most scenic coastline terrain in the world, home of the largest concentration of active volcanoes and grizzly bears in the world. And not that active volcanoes and grizzly bears are geologically or ecologically connected, but having them both in the same places gives the coastline a very powerful place. And it's a storm-tossed ocean, an ice-tossed ocean. It took us 2 years to make the journey 3,000 miles. So I'm jumping very quickly to our Ellesmere expedition. Nicholas introduced us to some of that landscape that we traveled through, pulling our kayaks for hundreds of kilometers, paddling through ice-choked waters, and all in motion. You know, if this ice closes in on you, it will squish you until your eyeballs pop out. So here's my partner, Eric Boomer, where the ice is closing in, getting out of his boat as quickly as possible, get the boat up on the ice, and hope that you don't die today. And of course, along with the hardship, along with the danger, there is absolute glory. I was 65 when I did that journey. It was 1,500 miles. We did it in 100 days. That's 15 miles a day, half a marathon a day, every day, no rest days except for the storm days. And I pushed myself to the utter limit. What does that mean, the utter limit? It means that at the end of the trip, we finished the journey, we completed it, we circumnavigated the island, and my body said, I did it for you, I'm done. I shut off and I started to die. This is not a metaphor. I was on the edge of death just because I had pushed myself to that edge where my body finished. And when we were in the medevac airplane flying into Ottawa International Airport, the flight nurse called up the trauma center at the Ottawa General Hospital, read my vital signs, and the trauma surgeon called the airport and said, hold all aircraft, all passenger aircraft. This man is dying. Give this plane priority landing so he can get to the hospital as soon as possible. Okay. Now I'm going to back up for a second. During the course of my 2-year journey, our 2-year journey, me and my partner, various partners, during the course of our journey along the Kamchatka coast over a period of 2 years, we met Moolynaut, a 96-year-old shaman who was born under the reign of Tsar Nicholas II, a Koryak woman. And she had the wisdom, such wisdom, that I ended up dropping all of my expeditions for the next 5 years to spend time in that village to learn her wisdom. And we're going to talk about that, what she had to teach me over those 5 years that I spent in the village, flying with the spirit raven to the other world. I don't know what that means exactly. Don't take me too seriously. Don't take me unseriously. But I spent those 5 years with Moolynaut and the black raven, Kutka. And in one of my journeys around the village, in the tundra surrounding the village of Ravenka, where Moolynaut lived, we met an old woman named Marina. And she said to me, if you lose the magic in your life, you lose your power. And that simple statement jolted me. It changed my life. Because when I grew up, we never talked about power. We talked about success. We talked about making money, about having a place in the community, of being esteemed, of having nice house, nice things. We never talked about power. And I realized that this was the journey all my life. All of these trips were about reaching inside and finding as much power as I could find. And that's what all these expeditions had been about. Power. Whoa, it's a slippery devil of a word, because it can refer to the greatest inward search to find the best that's inside you. And it can also refer to egotistical journey into accumulating money, into being able to do evil. So power becomes a slippery devil of a word, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. My latest book, my last book, it's been out for about 6 months now, is called Tracking Lions, Myth, and Wilderness in Samburu. And this is my journey into studying power. So, Samburu is in northeastern Kenya in Africa, in the Horn of Africa, near the Olduvai Gorge, where humanity evolved. The Samburu people are herders. They have their goats and their cows, and they bring them out into the savannah. They eat, come back, and that's the wealth of the village. When you when you look at this picture and you say that's somebody's house, you might be likely to say, oh, wow, that isn't much of a house, and that indicates poverty. A few sticks, some odd pieces of tarp and plastic and canvas. If that's your only house, you must be poor. But the Samburu people don't talk about poverty in terms of their house. They talk about poverty in terms of grass. If there's a lot of grass, the animals are fat and you're rich. If there's no grass, the animals are hungry and skinny and don't provide enough milk and you're poor. And when I was there, climate change related drought had caused this total lack of rainfall. It hadn't rained in 3 years. We were in a situation of poverty. It's normal in Samburu culture for young boys as young as 5 years old, but more likely around 10, to take the wealth of the village, the cows, out into the savannah where there are wild animals and herd them, guard them, lead them out, lead them back to the village. On the third day that I was there, a lion killed and ate one of the cows. The young boy, David, his English name, had the presence of mind to think, well, the lion killed that cow. That cow is already dead. I'll let the lion eat that cow. I'll herd up the rest of the cows, bring them back to the village, and then get the elders, the older people, the adults, to come out and deal with the situation. So David brought the cows back, all but one, and Deepa, the village headman, came to me and said, John, you want to help me track the lion? I said, sure. You know, I didn't know what we were supposed to do when we found the lion. I don't speak Samburu. I'm an old man. I don't hear very well anyway. And like, were we supposed to tell this lion it was a bad lion and he wasn't supposed to kill cows anymore? I mean, have you ever tried to train a house cat not to eat a sparrow? Well, anyway, we went off. We went into the bush. We found the cow. Deepa went, wow, the lion ate most of the cow, but not all of it. And he cut off a chunk of the remaining cow. Started to have lunch. It was lunchtime. He offered some to me. I said, no, that's okay. I have a peanut butter sandwich here. I'm good. And so we had lunch, and then we picked up the track of the lion and we started following it. Well, before I had left on this journey, on the tracking journey, one of the young men in the village had said, you're going to be tracking a lion. Lions are dangerous. You need to be armed. You need to defend yourself should things go haywire. So he gave me a wooden club. I've got it here. You can see it in my little profile picture. It's called a rungu. And he gave this to me. I thought that was kind of, interesting, funny, cute, whatever, charming. And now I'm off walking through the savannah. The tracks are very fresh. We're right on the track of a lion. And I look at this club and I go, whoa, whoa. I mean, what kind of a ragtag operation is this, sending me out into the savannah with a lion in the bushes, armed with a wooden club? And my first reaction is I get angry. I'm angry. Why didn't they give me a machete? How about a rifle? Something. My life isn't on the line, man. And then two things happen. One is I realize that anger isn't going to do me any good. In all my years in the wilderness, when things go bad on you, anger is the worst, the only bad emotion. What you need is wonder and glory. You need to be filled with alertness, with joy of being out there. So now I'm going through and I'm looking carefully into every piece of bush, trying to communicate with this lion, trying to be at peace with the situation, with myself, with the lion, with the bushes, with the universe. And then I take another step. I realize that I'm here in Africa, near the crucible of human evolution, and I'm reliving the Stone Age. I am a vulnerable human being armed with Stone Age weaponry and trying to survive in this situation. When I got back to North America, I asked myself, how did humans survive? And so I dug into the anthropological and archaeological literature, and I found something that took me on a journey, which eventually led me to write the current book, is that Homo lineage, our ancestors, started evolving a big brain about 5 million years ago. And then for several million years, our brain kept getting bigger, but we did not invent sophisticated tools and weaponry. Yeah, we had simple tools. This is a hand axe, a sharpened stone that you hold in your palm and you can use as a chopper or a weapon or whatever you want to use it for, but not sophisticated. No bow and arrow, no throwing shaft. It's not attached to a lever arm to make a hatchet or a tomahawk or something. So the question was, what were we doing with our big brains? Brains are expensive metabolic items. It takes a lot of energy, 5 times more energy to maintain brain tissue than it does to maintain muscle tissue. So we had to eat more food, find more food to nurture our brains, and evolution doesn't accept waste. We had to get some advantage from those big brains. What was that? Well, it turns out that actually the human experiment, the evolutionary experiment, wasn't that good. By about 70,000 years ago, human beings were becoming extinct. The lions were doing better than the people. Competition, predation, climate change was going on at the time, and humans were starting to become extinct. And then the population exploded. What caused that population explosion? Sophisticated tools and weaponry? No. Art. And if you take anything away from this talk, remember that art gave us the power to survive, not tools. What humans had was a cultural revolution, a joining together of the tribes, a love and cooperation and sharing ideas, dancing together. That's what gave us the power. That's where power comes from. And that's what we're talking about tonight is power. It was the storyteller, not the soldier, who brought us together around the campfire and gave us unity and gave us a reason to be and gave us the power to survive. Tools and weapons came later. In fact, it was the unity brought by the storyteller that led to invention, technology, and later science. And as time went on, now I'm jumping in time to 35,000 years ago, We became quite the storytellers. Look at this picture. This is about 35 to 40,000 years old, quite more recent than the first art. Look at this. This is a picture of a man and a bison, correct? Bison man. But wait a minute. Wait a minute. The man is leaning backward on his heels. He has a bird's head. He has a giant erection. There's a bird on a stick in the corner. There's a spear running across the flank of the bison. The guts of the bison are coming out. This isn't an attempt at depicting an accurate hunting scene. This is a myth. This is a story. We don't know what the myth is, but we know that in the caves of France and Spain and Southern Europe, people were telling stories. And these stories gave us the power to survive. Power, that word again. They gave us the power to travel across the Arctic into North America to hunt mammoths with weapons that were just basically a stick with a stone tied on the end of it. Okay, so now let's jump through history again. Let's jump a little farther. Around 10,000 years ago, we started farming. Our original survival was manifest through the consciousness revolution or the cultural revolution, and then we jumped to the agricultural revolution. We concentrated in cities. Time went on, industrial revolution. You all know this history. I'm not telling you anything new. And on into the computer revolution, which is where we are today in the Anthropocene, where human beings have become so powerful that they're altering the face of the earth, that we're a geological phenomenon. Yeah. And we have wonderful things. Air travel, amazing medicine. I'd be dead now if it were not for Western medicine, comfortable housing, computers and iPhones, and all that. But wait a minute, let's go back to what Marina said to us. If you lose the magic in your life, you lose your power. She didn't say if you lose your keys to your bulldozer or your iPhone, you lose your power. She said if you lose the magic in your life. Now, my question here today is, with all of the gizmos and gadgets that we have, are we losing our power, and where is that taking us? Well, without getting too fancy, we know that our technology anyway is taking us into climate change, where floods and droughts and tornadoes and fire are ravishing the earth. That picture in the lower left-hand corner of the two elk standing in the river in a forest fire was taken a few miles from my home in Montana. Let's go back to Africa again. In Samburu, in the world of 3-year drought, back to the villages. So I was there, and it got confusing what I was doing there, why I was, what I was up to. But I was hanging out in the villages, and the local guys thought I was kind of okay, I guess. And we'd go wandering around, riding these camels. These men were not camel whisperers. Their training techniques for the camels were pretty brutal. They would tweak their lips, turn their ears, pinch their eyeballs, and the camel didn't like that. The camel was not a happy camel. And one day the camel lightning bolt ran away. So Jawas, one of the young men, one of my good friends, came to me and he said, we got to go out in the desert and find lightning bolt. So we went wandering out into the desert and we didn't bring enough water. We didn't know where the camel was. It was a big desert. And once again, I thought, same thing as when the day I was tracking the lion. What kind of a ragtag operation is this? Why didn't we bring more water? Why did they let the camel get away? And you know, you get angry, but we know where we're going with that. Anger isn't your friend out there in the desert. So you take a deep breath and say, this is the water we have. This is the camel we're looking for. And you open your heart and your soul, or whatever words we have, to what we have to open to the desert. And the desert becomes your teacher, just as the lion becomes your teacher. And you think about all those journeys that you've taken, all those canoe trips, all those times you've been camping, all those adventures in rapids or snow or ice or whatever the adventures are, and you realize that every one of those adventures, every one of those days that you've been camping, wilderness has been teaching you. Wilderness has been giving you the power to manage yourself and to live in the most honorable way that you can live. As time went on, my time in Samburu, I was lucky enough to attend a wedding. So here we have people singing and dancing. And this is the wonder of humanity. This is what the art was about. This is how we became people, is by singing together, by dancing together, by being together, by loving one another, by telling stories. And I wish I could end here. We're almost done. It's getting late. The story is all over. Life is wonderful. The wilderness is our teacher. Everything is hunky-dory. But I can't end here, because the storytellers that drew us together have evolved into the storytellers that concentrate the power in a different way and create anger, hatred, warfare. And what happened in Samburu was basically, I went through 70,000 years of evolution from the Stone Age person with a wooden club, tracking the lion, and depending upon my relationship with nature, depending on my communication for my survival, accepting my vulnerability, counting on my fellow people because we have this community together, to the fact that there were people out there telling stories. And those stories were about killing each other. This is real. This really happened. This is not a metaphor. And all of a sudden, the AK-47 started showing up in town. And Deepa, the headman, who was so relaxed, tracking the lion, now became so serious. And I don't speak some Samburu, but when men show up with AK-47s, when all the faces are grim, and when people talk in that tense, definite, determined voice and go off into the savannah armed to the teeth, And then I was asked to track a lion, and it turns out we weren't tracking lions. We were guarding the village. We were running a perimeter because there were people there who wanted to kill us. And I saw the goodness of human power and the badness of human power all wrapped up into one short journey in Samburu. Einstein said the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. And every time I think about this talk, this little aphorism, this little paragraph, I think of Marina, I think of Moolynaut, I think all of this technology, all of this amazing world we live in the Anthropocene, and to solve the problems, technology is not enough. Technology is wonderful. I have a computer. I'm talking into a computer right now, and iPhones and all that stuff. But it's not enough. It won't solve our problems. Paul Ehrlich, who was the author of The Population Bomb and has been a lifelong environmentalist, I had coffee with him one day in Telluride, Colorado, and he said, we are in dire need of a spiritual revolution. This is the same as a consciousness revolution. Before we can move into the 21st century with a reasonable hope of creating a peaceful, healthy, and sustainable world. I was looking for a photo of the consciousness revolution, the modern consciousness revolution that I feel we so urgently need. And this is Moolynaut's great granddaughter in her daddy's shoes, the young girl growing up into a strange world, trying to follow in the footsteps of the men, women, the elders that she's living with. So 70,000 years ago, we survived, not because of tools and weaponry, but because we had a cultural revolution. And now in 2022, I've been going around the United States and Canada arguing that because we are once again in dire straits, we need, I call it now, a consciousness revolution, a change in the way of thinking. And this way of thinking has to be based on the old ways of thinking, not the new ways, because we've already established that the technology is fine and dandy, but it's not sufficient. It hasn't been working. It's not working. And I come back to Moolynaut, the old shaman, the old Koryak shaman, and she told me where the power comes from, that it's a combination of the shaman, the spiritual journey, the hunter, the pragmatist, because you do need to eat. But most important, it's a sustainable, reciprocal, loving relationship with the tundra, with Mother Nature, with the rivers, with the forests, with the ocean. And without that relationship, without that foundation, nothing else will work. And in the 5 years that I spent in Vivenka, that's the one thing I came out with, that we need the triumvirate, but most important, we need to establish our relationship with nature and our listening to nature and our love of nature. And joy. I worked for a number of years as a storyteller with a modern dance company, bringing joy. That's what started this whole thing, is singing and dancing and storytelling together. Joy is simple things, man. This isn't difficult. This isn't rocket science. We can send a rocket to Mars and land it and fly helicopters in Mars, but we can't get over the fact that joy is more important and better for us than anger. And why is nature such a healing? And my answer, one of the answers, there's many answers, I'm not going to feel that I've got the only answer, is that nature tells no stories. And even though stories brought us together and gave us strength, what really gives us strength is presence, is living in the now. And stories take us away from now. And when you're in a canoe, when you're like Nicholas, the first speaker tonight, and traveling across the frozen tundra and it's 40 below, there are no stories. There's just presence. Keeping an eye out for that polar bear. And when you live in the presence, watching for the storm, looking for a place to camp, and when you live in the presence, all of these extraneous things disappear, the anger, you don't need to go to war, you see. And so we go to nature because nature is our teacher, because nature tells no stories. Nature is sublime in some ways and sometimes, and nature is stark and harsh. It can rain on your parade or not rain for 3 years. But the earth is such a fragile and beautiful place to be. Out there in space, this is not a Photoshop picture. This is not a painting. This is a real photograph taken from space of the aurora borealis sitting like a crown across the Arctic reaches of our planet. So yeah, I'm an old man, I'm 76, and this book, Tracking Lions, Myth and Wilderness in Samburu, takes you on this journey that I just took you on into the growth of myth, the wonder of myth, the danger of myth, and the final journey into trusting wilderness, because wilderness brings us to the presence, because wilderness takes no stories. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
The epic and amazing Jon Turk. Everyone, please go to your reactions and drop a heart. If there's one thing we've learned from this talk, Jon Turk, it's about the importance of love and community as we seek ways to find our own powers by being together. So I just want to say thank you truly from the bottom of our hearts for bringing such a powerful narrative to our learning. You are always the most enigmatic, magnetic speaker. So thank you for gracing us with your time.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's so great to be here.
Amazing. Thank you.